Okay, thank you, Aldrin.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm Aldrin Quintero from Notre Dame Marble University, Philippines. My paper is all about Thomas Berry's technological transformation, its impact on environmental degradation. The content of the paper is somehow related to the discussion of Father Deck's ethics of care and Sir Ryan's discussion about liberalism. So the outline of the paper talks about the following. So for this morning, I will talk about the introduction, the contemporary ecological state, advancement in technology, and the response to technological environmental crisis, the role of technology in environment, conflicts and challenges, and of course the conclusion. So the paper started in the saying of Robert Oppenheimer. He said that I am become death, the destroyer of the worlds. So many technologies have the potential for good or for evil. We can only hope that technology will utilize to be used to improve our world and not to destroy it. Robert Oppenheimer is known to be the father of the atomic bomb. So basically, the talk that I will present this morning is not to devilize or to make technology bad and evil. Basically, the goal of this paper is to tell to the public that technology is somehow it must be attuned to the life of people and of course to the environment. So the contemporary ecological state of the world are basically governed by these four basic patriarchal oppressions. So these oppression are the following. First, of course, we know that rulers are there in the history of mankind, and the destruction that done to the environment is so serious. Like for instance, the atomic bomb and weapon of mass destruction is not it will be written in the history of mankind, and until today the damage had been felt, not only in aspect of course in our environment. And second one is men over women. So we heard ethics of care, the oppression of we are pursuing equality, but somehow this is also related to our conserved environment. And possessors over non-possessors, and the fourth one is humans over nature. So basically, we talk about man. Man is supposed to take care of the universe or the world. And of course, the logic says if you remove man in the planet, basically oppression, there's no oppression. And, but we see also the importance of man. We need to exist in order to make this place better. And somehow technology aids us to make the world better, a better place for us. However, due to the avalanche of greed, I will take that word from me. I heard that yesterday.
From Echo Philosopher of the Year, Keith.
I like that word because somehow that capsulizes the problem of humanity. It can always be rooted to our attitude towards consumerism. So the avalanche of greed. Basically, government leaders and economic elites in industrial growth societies continue to push for endless economic growth and development, according to Clark. And this participation of government and, of course, intertwined with politics, together with other institutions, are crucial to our future because they're part of the decision-making bodies. But somehow the problem there is about consumerism. In the industrial world, basically it becomes a way of life and addiction. So since we live in a simple community, And there's no problem with that. However, when we realize that there is so much resources to utilize, greed started. If we look into the history, I think the start of the industrial revolution is it all started there when Rockefeller started to introduce technology about petroleum. Everything follows. So in the new age, the vision is basically to promote the mega technology and solutions to economic and environmental ills. And these propose massive high-tech global management and development schemes for the biosphere. So later on, we realize that technology is affecting us, and it becomes we are so addicted to technologies to the extent that we cannot live without technology. So, of course, this can be traced to the common law tradition of the West. Because of the emphasis of personal rights. Basically, the West viewed nature as something to be exploited and something to be used by human for their advancement. But in the West, in the Eastern culture, the view about nature is different. For the Eastern culture, nature is something that is one and part of our self. And if you destroy nature, the analogy is also destroy the self. However, with the influence of Western culture, the third world countries are now entering into global markets and trying to become the first world by destroying their ecosystem and wild species as they emulate the industrial and consumer patterns of the ecologically destructive and sustainable first world countries. This is now the problem. If you see the presentation of Sir Ryan, the destruction of environment is now also seen in the eastern part. Like for instance, mining. So why do we need to do that? Because of course to cope with development and progress. And another thing, the industrial control of the media is among the most devastating forces threatening the viability of the human. So we all know that media is also controlled by big corporations. So in order to promote their business, to the extent that even education has been warped from these original purposes. So to the point where it prepares young people primarily to open their mind about the world. The educational institution is prepared for jobs in the destructive industrial society. So you see the problem there is the global industrial establishments are basically primarily they're responsible for the magnitude and the severity of the contemporary environmental crisis. And in that, it shaped the contemporary social paradigm of reality and value. So here, the industrial entrepreneurs, basically based on the economic production, use technology and encourage more consumerism, and to have this idea that the world is wonderful. But in reality, the entrepreneur industry is actually creating a waste world for humans and the rest of nature because of the damage done. So that is our current condition according to Terry. So in the advancement of technology, here technology is not supposed to be viewed as bad or evil. Technology becomes bad or evil when we try to use it in a different way because of our self-interest or motive. Basically, technology has allowed human beings to live longer, but you may ask, what for? So again, that is rooted to our consumption attitude. It's now done for its own sake. And it is no longer utility that drives people to buy and want more products because of these too much consumption and Yesterday, I heard about one of the problem of in the environment is due to overpopulation. And Lane is talking that it's not a problem. But for Thomas Berry, it is a problem because if there is overpopulation, you also think about the utilization of resources. So the more people, the more resources that will be used by people. And overpopulation is due to lack of education. So, like for instance, if the government cannot plan like for instance, there's one of the problem in the third world is lack of urbanization planning. So the mushroom of population is a threat in environment. So that is why for Thomas Berry, there is a need to address this problem. So, but I'm not saying that Thomas Berry is talking about you have to promote abortion or not. In his work, he don't have that kind of advocacy. So the other thing is, in the advancements of technology, it seems that utility has become an afterthought and secondary to the compulsive need to have and possess. So as people accumulate more and more things and live longer, but more diseases, corporations continue to supply all their demands. So as both production and consumption increase, basically the environment is pushed to its limits and forced to provide people more and more of their needs and wants. So the industrial agriculture and industrial system had put tremendous stress on the earth. So just like for instance, the use of pesticides. Europe is very particular with pesticides. So yesterday you heard about genetic modified engineering. These are some products of our big industries. So basically, chemical poisoning, for instance, in North America continent, chemical engineering was central to all the basic methodologies of that period. So to think that we can have viable human economy by destroying Earth is very absurd, according to Carson's study. So how did we respond to the technological environmental crisis or the effect of technology to environment? So basically, we have four methods. In the history, we already had this attempt to solve the problem of technology. Like for instance, in the new Intrapreneur method, basically this method, the goal of this is more on progress and scientific industrial process. The problem with this method is they lack sensitivity to what is happening to the earth. What they try to move forward is just for profit and more on money. They're not concerned with for the consequence that they are doing to the environment. The second is the humanistic viewpoint, and we heard so much about this movement. For instance, the rise of socialist movement, the labor movements, the religious groups. For instance, the Catholic popes are advocating this method. But one of the problem highlighted in humanistic viewpoint, it lacks concern with the consequences of industrial plundering of the natural world. Although we heard about them, they talk about problem about environment, but when it comes to the consequences of industrial entrepreneur, we still do not do something about it. Maybe because of the influence of corporations and too much greed. People can easily bribe, like what happened to Greta, as what mentioned earlier. The third one, who responded to the technological environmental crisis, is known as the integrity of nature movement. This is not new to you. We heard about deep ecology, And this emphasized the relationship of human to the earth. And this movement basically wanted to get rid of our conquering attitude and move into more evocative in terms of our relations to nature. So the third movement basically criticized the development of industrial company and the advancement of chemicals, agricultural, automotive construction, and even military and space industries. So the fourth one is the healing of the earth paradigm. So the third and fourth are related actually, but the fourth one, advocate by Thomas Berry, it's about calling for the healing of the earth. So here, Berry wanted to emphasize that technology is not bad actually. What is important is we need to improve technology that will help us or aid us to advance our civilization, but not to the extent of damaging the earth or the universe. So that's why here Thomas Berry used the term ecozoic era. So the other term for that is ecocentric. Late yesterday talks about anthropocentric method. And here, Thomas Berry laid down or prescribed the following. So these are the 7 criteria supposedly to be adopted like in policy making, even in academic institution, or even in religion. So one of the criteria in order to achieve or move into the ecozoic era is to emphasize that human technology should function as an integral relation with earth technologies, not in a despotic or disturbing manner or under the metaphor of conquest, but rather in the evocative manner. So the second one is we must be concerned about the order of the magnitude of changes that are needed. So the industrial age has so alienated and so conditioned humans that survival outside the industrial age are so alienated, and the industrial bubble is difficult. And sustainable progress must be progress for the entire Earth community. And for humans to advance by eliminating, degrading, or poisoning other life systems is not only to diminish the grandeur of Earth experience, but also to diminish the chances for human survival in any acceptable mode of fulfillment. And he also talks about technologies need to be integral, and they need to take care of their waste products. Waste disposal should be associated with process, either the immediate process or related process. So he also talks about nature is violent as well as benign. Our technologies have a defensive role to play in this. And the other one, the seventh, prescription. Our new and healing technologies need to function within a bio-regional context, not simply on a national or global scale. So this is what Berry proposed. When it comes to how to achieve this, it's up to the culture or to the state how they're going to improvise or develop these kind of prescriptions. That is why ethics is imperative. Protecting environment, we need to be cautious in the use of technology. We cannot just design technology to destroy nature, but due to pragmatic reason. Like for instance, yesterday we're talking about solar, making the energy resources must coming from solar panel or from the renewable energy. But somehow it's not possible because if you're going to implement that, it's very expensive, and at the same time you need spaces for that, and having spaces will destroy the environment. So The other one is democratizing the use of technology to ensure that those affected by it are part of the decision-making process. So we cannot just decide for our sake. Like for instance, we need to consider also like the indigenous people. When we decide, we have to consider their way of life, their situation, and not only to advance the interests of corporate industry. And then cultivating a new understanding of good life includes deep ecologist idea of preserving the wilderness. And according to Gruen, when technology can aid in protecting the natural world and can be developed and implemented in a non-coercive and participatory way, then technology is morally acceptable. So basically, technology must be used, and the aim of technology is to achieve the highest good. That is always the primary goal of making technology. And this good is inclusive of both the human and the entire biotic spheres. Barry, in his work, namely the Dream Earth and the Great Work, so these books acknowledges the problem. So he is aware that the solution to the problem of environmental crisis is not easy. The solution to achieve this is not easy. The most challenging task is to try to depoliticize. So it's more on the problem here is when politics comes in. We have, although we have genuine ideas how to address the problem of the environment, but when politics comes in, everything changed. So, and there are no prominent. Another one is the language that we use. So basically, when it comes to promoting ecological consciousness or ecological conservation, we limit the information pertaining to that problem. So that can be seen in the newspapers. So we seldom see articles, portion of that talking about environmental crisis. And periodicals consistently designate space for commentary of ecological situation. More or less, this problem is not presented to the public. We heard more news on sports, on those Hollywood actors and actresses, but when it comes to environmental crisis, so we don't hear so much idea about this. Well, the reason for that is because the industrial entrepreneur don't want to hear. They don't want to let public know about the consequence of the works that they're doing. So in reality, the control of industrial industry with the media is among the most devastating forces threatening the viability of human, because they wanted to, as much as possible, prevent developing deep consciousness or awareness about the problem of environment. So both education and religion need to ground themselves within the story of the universe. So we need storytellers in the academy emphasizing the beauty of nature and appreciating the value of life. And like for instance, we need people who can communicate with these young minds that nature should not be destroyed. Rather, nature should be preserved as much as possible. And another thing is the industrial entrepreneur is in the possession of the natural resources of the planet, either directly by corporate control or indirectly through government subservient to the industrial enterprise. Sir Ryan mentioned earlier that there's so much advocacy pertaining to environment, but there's a hidden agenda at that. So like they wanted to promote corporate social responsibility, but basically the motive is to promote business. So like what happened to Greta, alternative resource energy is actually the main agenda why she was there in the World Forum. So, in conclusion, transformation of humanity's priorities will not come easily because it requires great work. So, this work somehow covers the realms of politics, legal system, the economic and industrial world, education, and religion. And basically, the goal is to design a human technology that is in tune with the natural process of the ecosystem. I'm not saying that we have to go back to pre-industrial period and live without technology. So, as what Larry is saying, we have to move into a kind of era where technology is used in order to make our life better, but we are also conscious that technology should not bring destruction to nature. And of course, it requires great effort. So that is why policy on the environment ought to be informed by ecocentric values as much as possible. So he mentioned that in the prescriptions earlier. And of course, generally, our government have a big role to play because they are in the decision body. So the decisions is affecting everyone. So basically, they have to make laws how to use technology that is environmental friendly and it does not affect the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. The floor is open for discussion. Who would like to start? John, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Look, one of the hopeful signs, I think, is coming out of Europe, or continental Europe anyway, where they've got a strong movement now on what they call responsible research and innovation. And there's a lot of work going into, what sort of research should be undertaken, how it should be undertaken, what sort of technology should be developed and so on. So they're trying to look at these issues up front before you get too far down the track. And in that, I think they're a long way ahead of the English-speaking world, where we tend to, develop anything, and if it's a big mess, then you get litigation coming in or something when after a lot of people have already been harmed. So I think it's worthwhile looking at that, because I think that fits in well with what you were talking about.
Thank you, John. I think there's so many organizations right now promoting about environment. Well, the only problem there is somehow when these organizations will affiliate themselves to politicians, and politicians will abuse or utilize them. So the problem comes in. So
Marlon? Yep.
Is Thomas Berry the eco-theologian?
yeah,
Please, that's his
so please.
Yeah, I think in relation to technological transformation, Berry agrees with Townsend, Lynn Townsend White Jr., the American historian, that the roots of ecological problem are actually mythic. They are more of religion. And according to these two, answers to ecological problems must come from within religion itself. So how can religion help in technological transformation, at least in Berry's mind?
I think that one of the things that Berry did when he went to China and India, when he realized that religion plays a vital role in solving the problem of environmental crisis. I think it's more on the awareness of the spirit. I think that was mentioned by Berry in his book. that we have to realize that we are one with the universe, and religion is somehow very influential to educate their followers the importance of Dharma. So I think Father Dex can attest to that. There's so many advocacies in the parishes to address the problem of environment, response to environmental degradation. Like for instance, in our place, the Catholic Bishop of the Philippines, particularly in South Cotabato, we have problems in mining industry. So there's a Canadian company called SMI wanted to operate there. The mining is an open pit mining, so they wanted to utilize the mountain in order to extract coal and gold. And the church made a bold attempt to address that problem by pressuring politicians not to approve the permit to operate. And I think that is one of the response coming from religion to prevent this problem. To become active in the decision making in the government.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Dexter.
In addition to that, in particular, in my experience, our religion has this great role in advocacies, not in policy making, but it can influence. Or our religion, for example, for my experience, in the place I am assigned now, it's very rural area. It's a mountainous place. It's a beautiful place. I'm really happy that I was hesitant to be assigned there. My bishop, when he assigned me, in fact, I was climbing in the Mount Sinai. And he texted or called me, but I didn't respond because it's expensive. So only to find out that I was assigned in that mountainous place. So because I was thinking I should be close to the school I am teaching, but thanks to God, I accepted that assignment. There's one river in that place. It's a very clean river, good river. So I go there with some of the people. But I noticed that every time I come back, there are some visitors coming from the city. They enjoy the place, they love the because the water, it's potable, can drink, right? It's very clean. But I'm sad that there are plenty of trash. So, as a concerned pastor, I included that in my sermon. So, of course, I try to contextualize my sermon to accommodate that responsibility. So I kind of announced that if you happen to go to that beautiful river of ours and the next generations to enjoy it, so please, be responsible with your trash, with your garbages. I didn't know that somebody heard it because of technology, So thanks to technology, one parishioner or one of the in the congregation heard my sermon. So as a kind of activism, he also put that in his blog. And not only in the blog, he really because he's working in barangay. It's a kind of a small unit in our country to working with the people. He together with his companions in the barangay, they really, because they're in charge of the committee on this, clean up. So what he did together with some companions, he went there and gathered the trash and put some placards. Okay, do not put your trash here. Bring your trash with you. So that's a small thing, but for me, it's a great effect. It's a great effect because it it advances the advocacy, and people are becoming aware because of some instrumentality, like for example, people in the church, like me, myself, advocating that. But of course, it must be really followed up by people in the local units or in the civil society.
Okay, thank you. In addition to that, I mentioned about SMI, but I did not mention how the detail, how did the church contribute to prevent the mining industry to enter into the place. There is a mining act in the Philippines approved by the government, and basically, if the local government will not give permit to the mining operators due to maybe seen as a destructive or not environmental friendly, so they cannot issue a permit. But what happened there is that the national government issued directly a permit to that company, and without consulting the local government. So if you try to look at it, there is an issue of a policy between local government and the national policy, because the national government is more concerned on the revenue or the tax paid by the mining industry. So what the church people did in that area is to mobilize the parishioners to be proactive. Like there was a debate between the mining company and the environmental advocates pertaining to what is the advantage of having this mining industry here and the disadvantage. It was well attended. In fact, many parishioners went there because during the homily of the priest, they're always telling to the public the destruction of this mining industry. And when the people move, when the people is participating into this process, and of course they saw the huge support from the public, and they realized that they cannot go in because of the disapproval of the people. I think that's how religion can help to protect the environment somehow.
Thank you. Yes, Roger.
Yes, you're right in terms of individual initiative in the Philippines as regards to responding to environmental crisis, and pastors and priests and some church people are responding. But I still have to see a kind of systemic approach to environmental crisis coming from the church. Can there be a father is a church people? I still want to see a systemic coming from really the hierarchy, the CBCP, if you like to, the Catholic Bishop Conference in the Philippines, because basically, as Marla was saying, the root of religion coming from this Abrahamic concept of land ownership that Professor Jan was mentioning yesterday. It's about really a kind of dominion, this interpretation from the Bible, and this is somehow also root has effect in terms of exploiting nature. Is there an effort from in your own maybe if you know some? Is there an effort from the church to interpret this kind of theological concept on ownership of land?
Okay. When it comes to that, the structure system, in the paper that I wrote, that was not actually emphasized. Maybe that can be integrated as a form of suggestion or recommendation, because what Barry wanted to emphasize in the prescription that he wrote is to adapt these kind of values whenever they create policies, whenever they create decisions. So they have to make a priority that the environment must always be part of it, and whenever there is technology or usage of it, environment must always be protected as much as possible. And I don't know about the church structure pertaining to the response to the environmental crisis. But as I observed in our country, basically the church people are very active when it comes to protecting the environment. You mentioned about Abrahamic concept. I'm sorry, I'm not totally attuned or familiar with that, but I'm pretty sure they're doing everything.
Well, the CBCP released several pronouncemements addressed on ecological issues, and actually one of these documents was quoted by the Holy Father in Laudato Si on the situation of the planet. That was released some years ago. The problem is they are beautiful to read and listen to. The problem is, it's from theory to praxis. The movement from theory to praxis is really the problem. They are well written, they are well substantial, well supported by evidences, but it does not really penetrate the consciousness of the people. Number one, most of them are written in English, and many people really actually read it. I hope when the CPCP releases a document, it will be translated to the local languages so that people can understand. So, for example, every now and then they release a document, they are read in churches, but mostly in English. While Filipinos speak English, and many of them do understand English, but again, there are some ideas and suggestions that are lost in translation, and they don't materialize into effective actions. So one of the probably suggestions is for these documents to be translated into local language, and then let the people really actually read it. They are inspiring, definitely. They are eye-opening, because I do read them. But again, it's like in our Catholic schools, for example, do we distribute them as a reading material of our students? Or we don't. Okay, so I'd say, for example, the church today in the Philippines is fighting death penalty. But do we give it as a reading material to our students for them to be enlightened? If it is, yes, that's good. The CBCP Commission on Prison released a booklet. In our school, we distributed it to all our students, and it is a requirement for them to read and to write reflection letters, reactions, comments, criticisms. But CBCP pronouncements are not distributed to the people. They are read in churches, but that's it. They are posted in bulletin boards in parishes, and that's it.
Maybe we can ask Father Des, because he represents.
I cannot represent. I speak on my own. I think there are some good, there are some salient points. First is that the problem with if you remember when geothermal was an issue in Mount Apo. When that was, I think I was in college then, that geothermal was really in the Mount Apo, one of the good place, but it's very alarming, threatening that time, because there was this idea that if you disturb it, it might really erupt, and it will destroy everybody. It would destroy. But so it was lobbied by then the local bishop at the time, Juan de Dios Pueblos. He went to the then President Cory Aquino to lobby the concern of the people, the natives, and all this. Of course, the advocacy remains an advocacy because second, separation of church and state. So advocacies might be so good, so wonderful, carefully and scientifically backed up, but decision makers, they would really pursue what they would, So again, morals versus money rather. So it was not the concern of the then President Aquino at that time. Third is that Pope Francis released this Laudato Si. It's beautiful, as Sir Marlon would say, it's beautiful. There are some efforts to make it into in vernacular, but I think it's not the only problem. The other problem with the bishops is that they could not come up to a single decision. The problem or the issue could be dealt with individual bishops. For example, when that Bishop Juan de Dios brought the issue of geothermal issue, and he brought the issue in the CBCP, the College of Bishops in our place, it was not the concern of other bishops. They have different problems. So what I think it would be a different story if the CBCP would really go to the president and make it a point. I think there's a different tone. But what happened is that they have different problems of their diocese, so they have different problems, so they could not come up as one CBCP to convince the president then. So there was a different so I think that's the problem. So again, theory and application. Besides, the church in the Philippines does not enjoy that policy making and implementation, only in the level of advocacies.
Thank you for that, Father Hicks.
Any other reflections or comments? I guess appropriate stewardship is important for all people of all faiths, if we are stewards of a plant. There's been a few papers on the environment. Maybe amongst us, we have consensus, but there are certainly politicians who don't have this. So, thank you very much.